So this is the second part of drawing Biggie from WWE Universe, and in this part we are going to complete the remaining parts that we saw on the first part of the video. So if you haven't seen part 1, so first link is in the description box. And if you want to see the real-time sketch, it will be uploaded on the Sunday on my second channel Shwet Sketches 2.0, where I upload totally real-time sketch which is over 6 hours, 5 hours, 8 hour sketches, how I hold pencils, how I erase something. This is time-lapse video, so I am bounded with time, so I have to upload in just 10 or 11 minutes. But in that my channel of Shwet Sketches 2.0, I have uploaded up to 6 hours, 8 hour sketches, so you can see how I draw and how I shade. So now as we focus on this part of the main second part of the Biggie, our main focus will be on the how to shade his hand, right hand, and the remaining part of the faces. So now if you want to focus on the darker and highlights parts, as I always say that focus on the highlights and shadows, but no one tells you that how to focus. And the main thing about focusing on the highlights and shadows is that where the light source is coming. So if you want to see where the light source is coming, you should focus that where the small parts or the small remaining parts of the face where layer a bit more whiter or lighter parts, just like light sources on the left hand side of the Biggie. So of course there are more darker values on the right hand side, so you get to know that where to make shadows and where to make highlights. So you have to keep on focusing where the highlights and shadows are, and the trick I have given you below. So now to focus on the main parts of shading more and more grades, you have to make a base layer first. Without base layer there is nothing grade system like that. And if you want to use charcoal pencil on face, that's okay, but if you are not used to with charcoal pencils, don't use it on skin texture. Use it on hairs, use it on ornaments that your reference picture is wearing, clothes or any other things, but don't use it on face. You can use charcoal or graphite powders on face, then make more and more outlines. But I will recommend that always use graphite pencils for any skin texture or any other products, because if you focus on the skin texture, there's layer a bit of more details on skin texture. But if you will use charcoal pencils, you are limited. Like in charcoal pencils there are just 3 grades: first hard, second medium, and third is soft. But in graphite pencils there are more than 10 to 20 grade systems, like 2H, 2B, and up to 10B, 11B. So for the cornea of Biggie I have used 10B pencil because it is the most darker value of the whole face. Just like charcoal, I can also use charcoal pencil, but if I make layer a bit mistake on making those cornea part of Biggie, it will be not easy for me to erase those with charcoal pencil. But with graphite pencil I can easily erase with mono eraser. Now the most important part of the face making is that how you blend the darker or the shaded parts. Just like the upper part of cheek of Biggie, there is layer a bit darker part, but if you want to blend it using a makeup brush or tissue or any other thing, then you will lose your details. So for that you should use a smallest blending stump. I always say that don't use blending stump and charcoal pencils on faces, but this time I have used blending stump, which is the smallest one and the pointed one, so that I can apply more details to my faces or any other reference picture faces. Now with the makeup brush I am just layer a bit of blending every whiter and the darker parts. So keep on focusing where the highlights parts are, because the right hand side cheek of the Biggie is layer a bit more whiter as compared to left hand side one, because light hand side or light source is also on the right hand side. So of course the darker and lighter values are combining on the faces. So you have to keep on focusing on the details, and if you will lose detail, then your sketch will look totally like a drawing, not like a realistic sketch. Now using a mono, I personally recommend that for the sketch of particular any of skin texture or hyperrealistic sketches, use mono erasers. If you don't have mono eraser, you can go for sharpening your rubbers, but I don't recommend those things, because in previous parts I have said that you can cut your erasers and make or using a mono eraser. But I highly recommend that if you are going for hyper realistic or realistic sketches, use a mono eraser, because there are smaller highlights on the face or the skin texture, and if you want to apply those details on the faces or skin texture, you have to make it small, or rubber should be too small, and sharpening your rubbers continuously is not easy, so use mono eraser. Now for making the bigger or the biggest arm, I personally totally like his arm which is too big. So for making those biceps and the shoulder parts of Biggie, our main focus will be on the shoulder part, because biceps are a bit more highlighted as compared to shoulder ones, so you can apply more details to shoulders, but there is a bit shadows on the smaller or the biceps parts. So focus that base layer is more important while making skin textures. Skin textures are always important if you are going with a graphite pencils. Don't use more than 6B or 8B pencils if the skin tones is a bit dark, as we all saw that in previous parts where the skin tone was a bit lighter, so we have used up to 4B pencils only on the parts where the shadows were on the third layer. But in this texture of or skin texture of making Biggie, our main focus will be on the layer by layer method, which will be up to 8B pencils. Or what I mean about saying layer by layer will be, for the base layer I have used 5B pencils, but in previous parts where the skin tone was a little bit lighter, I have used 2B pencil or 3B pencil for a base layer, and for the second layer I have used 7B pencil for Biggie, and for the previous parts I have used only 4B or 3B pencils, and in the condition that the shadows or darker parts are. But for the sketching Biggie, our main thing or using a main thing is that darkening more parts so that the lighter values comes out or the highlights easily available. You can see that layer bit part of shoulders and biceps are leftovers of whites, but if you will focus more on those parts, those are 2B pencils, so that it looks totally realistic. You cannot leave your skin texture or any other part of your face or any other like legs, face, neck or any other parts totally white, because no part of any face or any reference picture is totally white. So I have used 2B pencil for marking those smaller highlighted values. Now for the connection between like Biggie is holding both hands, so connection between those biceps and the chest is making layer bit more darker and shadowed values. So for those straighter lines of darker values, you should use a 8B pencil, or you can also use 10B pencil, but I will recommend that make a darker or 7B or 8B pencil first, and then see where the darker values, more darker values are, so that you can blend it with your biceps and chest also. So the main focus will be blending your skin texture with those clothes and other parts. So keep on focusing where the highlights and shadows are, and your sketch will look totally good. Just like this, I have used a makeup brush for blending those parts. I haven't used blending stump, but I will use blending stump for those 8B parts which were the connection of biceps and chest on the right hand side. So I will use blending stumps only there, not every part of hand but the darker parts, because I haven't sharpened my blending stumps, because if you are using your blending stumps continuously, it will leave its darker marks, and that is not recommended in any sketch. That if you will lose your sketching power or more darker values, it will look totally weird. So use sharpened blending stumps, and I will see you in the part 3 of.
So if you have learned something from this video, subscribe and drop a like. Comment down your question and queries regarding this tutorial. Meanwhile, take care of your loved ones too. Have an artistic day. tattoos.